55 minutes. Hello, welcome back to Econometrics YouTube channel. Today we shall be introducing ourselves to a new course which is about project writing. Now I understand that a lot of you may be having challenges with writing your project. In fact, you might be very scared of writing your project, maybe due to one or two things that students ahead of you have gone through, and because of that you're feeling inadequate to write a project. See, you are not the only one in this particular scenario. When I was in my second year in school, undergraduate studies, obviously, I think was the second year, towards the end of my second year or so, I began to be afraid of writing a project because I never even thought I could graduate, because I look at students writing project and I'm like, what is this? Then some of my mates, or I think a particular classmate, then used to mention journals. Like, okay, I've gone through this journal, I've gone through this journal, and I never knew what a journal was. Don't nail me to the cross right now. And I didn't know anything about journals until maybe my final year. And you may not even know anything about journals right now, so why do not specify it? Alright, but over time, it's not a difficult stuff, right? A journal is not a difficult stuff, it's like a project you get, but kind of a summarized paper. So it's not as voluminous as a final year project should be, or is, right? So maybe 6-7 pages. So I think the highest number of pages I've seen in the journal should be maybe 18, maybe 24, including all the references. So it's not a big deal. We are going to talk about how to get journals, how to read journals for you to be able to write your final year projects, work, and so on and so forth. So before going into that, what is project? What is a project? The project I'm talking about here is academic projects. You can have a lot of projects. You could have infrastructural projects and stuff like that. That's not the project I'm talking about here. I'm talking about your final year thesis. So you could call it your thesis depending on your level of study. And I think postgraduate students call theirs thesis, then undergraduate students call theirs project, final year project. And so a project can be called an academic research or thesis. A final year thesis is a research work carried out by ultimate students, that is final year students, of a college or university or other higher institutions of learning as they round up their program or as they round up their program. So when you get to your final year, you are supposed to write a project. And why should you write a project? Why should you write a project? There are maybe a couple of reasons, but I've written 2 reasons here. Okay, purpose of writing a project. So number 1, to demonstrate students' understanding of their field, okay, of their field of study. So you write a project to demonstrate your understanding. No, you've gone through this course for, let's say, 4 years or 5 years, depending on your course of study. And yes, please, before I proceed, this, okay, of course, it's economics that you have here. So this course is for economics students. So the method of writing a project that would be discussed in this particular work, right, is for economic students or students in related fields. So if you are a science student, this course will not be useful to you because the method that you carry out your own research may be very, very different from the way economic students do theirs. Alright, and for maybe students of sociology, psychology, yours might also be different, I don't know. But there are 1 or 2 things that you are going to gain from this course anyway, regardless of your field. Stuff like maybe how to find a topic, which will be very difficult. Then you may be looking at stuff like plagiarism. Okay, if you've ever written for students in the UK, or you've done maybe an assignment or something related to a project work, I do stuff like that. So for students abroad, especially in the UK, you are going to be having issues with plagiarism at first. They take it more seriously than many Nigerian universities take theirs, right? So I would also discuss plagiarism in this particular course, although not in this topic. So along the line, there are 1 or 2 things that you are going to gain regardless of your field of study. But I just have to emphasize the point that this course is really for economic students. Alright, so purpose of writing a project. Number 1, to demonstrate students' understanding of their field of study. So you've gone through this course, you've studied this course for 4 years, or you've studied this course for 3 years plus, and in your final year, you are expected to write a project. You are expected to do an academic writing. So why are you supposed to do that? Why are you being asked to do that? You have to demonstrate how well you've understood your field so far, right? So that is one exercise. So it's not like you do a course online and then you go and we probably just get a certificate and you're done. No. Project research writing will test how much you've understood. Of course, the project is not going to be about all the topics or all the courses that you did during your before your final year, but at least it will require knowledge, from different courses, different aspects of your field in order to come up with something really cool. And with that, the school is then confident, your department becomes confident that you have learned really well in that particular department during your duration of stay. Okay, number two, to contribute to the existing body of knowledge. So you've learned all the textbooks that you read during your program, your study program, were written by some people. So they used all of these things. They were impacted by all of these materials. So let's say your textbooks, your handouts, your handbooks, your video materials too. Sometimes you have lecturers recording video classes, just like I'm doing, but I'm not a lecturer. All right. So you have all of those. So you've been impacted in one way or the other. Even journals, if you've been exposed to journals, newspapers, articles, all of those academic writing stuffs, books. If you are in arts, maybe novels and stuff like that. So you've been impacted in one way or the other by those materials. So you are living your program now. What are you going to leave behind? All right. So that is one other thing. One other reason that students are required to write their project. So you've been impacted. So you have to impact. You have to also do something before you go. A project is not a big deal. I can say that now because I'm already exposed to one or two aspects of it. But really, I understand the fear. If you're afraid, I understand the fear. But calm down. Put your hand on your chest like this and say this way 3 times. All is well. All is well. All is well. Right. Thank you. That's on 3 idiots. All right. So a project typically has between 5 to 6 chapters. It might be 4. All right. But it depends on, I think, 3 things. It depends on your supervisor. It depends on your school style of writing a project, and it depends on your department style of writing a project. So you might just have to write 4 chapters. You might have to write 5. You might have to write 6. But whatever you're going to do, all the things I'm going to discuss in each chapter is going to feature in your project. So the only difference is that maybe chapter 2 might be collapsed into chapter 3, so to have just a single chapter. So once you collapse chapter 2 into chapter 3, so you eventually have 5 chapters. Do you understand? Now, chapter 6 may also be collapsed into chapter 5, and once you've done that, you may be having 5 chapters. So if you do like 2 collapse, like chapter 2 and 3, you collapse them, like you bring them together. Chapter 5 and 6, you bring them together, so you'll be having 4 chapters at the end of the day. But essentially, whether you have 4 chapters or you have 6 chapters, your project will contain the same thing. Now, the things I'm going to discuss in this topic or in this course, right? They may not be ultimate, right? So there might be a mix. It is subjective in nature. Your lecturer may want this, your supervisor may want this, and you may have to remove it from here. Like there are some things that your supervisor may want that won't be in what I'm discussing, and there are some things that I will discuss that your supervisor may find unnecessary. Okay, but this course is going to be a very great template for your project writing. You can take that out to the bank. They won't give you any money, but just take it there first. All right. So I've said the project has 6 chapters typically. So chapter 1 contains introduction. So that aspect introduces us to what you want to talk about in your project. Just stories. So chapter 1 to 3 really is about stories. So you're telling stories of what other people have done, right? So you're more or less reporting. So you consult a lot of academic writing journals, really. Okay, you consult a lot of them and start to do some things together. So introduction is about, okay, what do you want to do, right? So you talk about, just introduce us what you want to do. So it's not supposed to be in pages. So if you have like 3, 4, 5 paragraphs, you are okay. You have to introduce. So introduction shouldn't take so long. Now, if you call me and say, okay, Mr. Ban, introduce yourself. Okay, my name is this. I finished from this school. I studied this. I finished this particular grade. These are my hobbies and whatever. So I shouldn't introduce myself in more than, let's say, 30 seconds to 1 minute. So that's just it. So when you're supposed to introduce, you have to it's not meant to be that lengthy. So maybe sometimes 1 page. But what you must note now is the quality of writing, not the quantity of writing. So you might write 5 pages of introduction. It's already too much, all right, and it may not make sense. And there might be someone else who has written a single page, an introduction of a single page, and the person was very brief, the person was very succinct, like straight to the point, and the introduction is done. So just make sure that your introduction is making sense. You are introducing us to the subject matter. So before you go to introduction, you obviously have a topic. Alright, so you are going to tell us some things about that topic. So just let us know what is going on. So that's just what introduction is about. Now, so like I said, 4 to 5, 3 to no, not 3 is too small. Let's see, 4 to 6 paragraphs is okay. Not 2-3 lines paragraph. Okay, let me just put it this way: a page or a page and a half introduction. You are okay, except you're writing a dissertation. So if you're writing a dissertation, that your PhD, okay, so that's going to be a different ball game entirely, But it is what it is. Now, number 2, you have objective of the study, which is still under chapter 1. So that's talking about your aim. Why are you researching this? So what are you looking for? So let's say you are, we are going to discuss all of these things. So I don't want us to go deep into it in this very first video. So if you want to check the effect of inflation on economic growth, so why do you want to check it? Why are you interested in it? So that is what objective of the study is about. Now, you may have 1, you may have 2, you may have 3, right? But you have to be very careful. Like I'm going to discuss when we are talking about chapter 1, you have to be very careful because your number of objectives will determine the number of models you have in chapter. Where do you have that? Chapter 4, your methodology, and that will lead us into your analysis. So if you know that you don't want to do too much work, you want to limit your objectives to just 1 or 2, but they are going to be great objectives, not beating about the bush. All right. Research questions. Now, research question is from the objective of the study. So you want to study the effect of inflation on Nigeria's economic growth. So why do you want to look at it? We are looking at it because recently inflation, the prices of goods and services have been skyrocketing more than it used to be on average. Let's say in the last 3 years during this Buhari's administration, a lot of crazy things are happening. You get to the market and things become funny. This morning things were funny on my way here. My tea fare was like twice what I used to pay, and it's just within a period of 1 year. So I'm looking at 100% increase in what I used to consume before, the part of what I used to consume before. So let's say things like that just started to happen between 2019 and 2022. Okay, so you are interested in how you are particularly interested in how the inflation of that period has impacted on Nigeria's economic growth. So that's your objective. So your research question would now be, so you'll be asking the question, how has inflation affected economic growth? Question mark. So that's a research question. So if you have several other objectives, so your research question will follow those objectives. So that's about that. All right. Significance of the study. Now, significance of the study is about, okay, you want to do this project, you want to carry out this project. Is it useful to anybody? That's the significance. Is it useful to anybody? So you can pick a topic that you are so interested in that makes a lot of sense to you. You have objectives, you have aims, you have questions you want your research to answer. That's the research question. But it may be useless to people. Like a lot of people may not be interested in it. Alright, maybe you want to talk about how what topic can I just think of now? Something that's not so important to a lot of people. Okay. And I can't really think of one right now, but what significance of the study is essentially about is who are the people that this research work is going to benefit. Now, are those people, are they significant in number? So if they are not significant in number, you are doing something, you want to tell us how maybe electricity instability destroyed your TV, alright, in your room. How electricity instability destroyed your TV in your room. Okay, it's fine. Now, we have an objective, right? You want to know, how it happened, or why it happened, or why shouldn't it have happened, stuff like that. But besides you, and probably your roommates, who is interested in that topic, what's my business with your TV that got spoiled? Except I'm your electrician that is supposed to help you to repair it, which is, I'll be having a good concern about it, right? Because so that's that. So when you're talking about significance of the study, one question that should come to your mind is this going to be useful to anybody? Alright? And if you have an answer to that question in affirmative, So positively, right? So you ask yourself another question: is this gonna be of interest to a significant number of people? So if it is not going to be important, so don't bother. All right, like the example I stated, how interested is your TV. I don't. It's not my business, right? It's not my business. And your neighbor next to you, the probably person is not probably the person's business as well. So these are the things you'll be looking out for, right? As you are, writing your chapter one, as you are selecting your topic, which you'll be talking about in the next class. Now, the next one is scope of the study. So scope of the study is talking about the time frame of the study. So I'm looking at the impact, the effect of inflation on Nigeria's economic growth, right? Within what's my sample period? So within between 1980 and 2021. Okay, so I think that's like 31 years. So if you are using, because one of the things you should note about this research, about this course, is that I'll be emphasizing, at least for now, on what do you call it, secondary data related projects. Okay, so here you are not going to be, when there's primary and there's secondary. So for primary, you'll be issuing questionnaires to people, but here you'll be using secondary data from, let me say, WDI, CBN, statistical bulletin, National Bureau of Statistics, or what are they called, and taking data from reputable organizations, right? So that is the kind of project I'm talking about here. So if your own project is going to involve issuing of questionnaires, I think I should tell you up front that the entirety of this course may not be that useful to you. So that's how I'm just beginning the recording of this particular course. So I don't know, along the line you might be able to incorporate primary data, but for now, like with what is in my mind, right, my own objective of this study, which is objective of this course, right? So this course is like a project to me, okay, is to find a way to make students that are engaging themselves in secondary related data projects to have a good write-up at the end of the day. And the other objective is for them to be able to do that in 3 to 4 weeks. You can write your project in 3 to 4 weeks, but you have to be close to a pro, right? So you can't do that as a novice. All right, I didn't write mine in 3 to 4 weeks, right? I didn't do that. Maybe like 6-7 weeks. It was somehow, the story was somehow. I couldn't find a topic in my first semester. The second semester, my supervisor had to suggest a topic for me to do, and I just took it. And whatever I wrote then, I'm not so proud of it because I didn't really know what I was doing, right? So, but that's that about that. If you go through this course very well, you should be able to write your project in 3 to 4 weeks, provided that you don't have a supervisor that is cruel or a supervisor that is unavailable. So there are supervisors like that, they are never available. I don't know why they give students those kind of supervisors. So if your supervisor is someone that is available, that is friendly, at least a supervisor from Borne University that I got to know of was very friendly to her. Is this supervisee that I'm going to call the students under her? And when I was listening to, because it was a VN, whenever she corrects the students, she uses a VN, so a voice note, right? She has the students take audio of what they were saying. So when I listened to her, she was correcting the students and this and that. I was like, this is how correction should be. It's not the one that you are harsh. The student doesn't even know what you are correcting. So the student didn't know why you cancel the work, and you ask the person to go and rectify it. When I don't know what is wrong, what am I going to rectify? Which is probably some of the problems that some of you watching this might be having with your project or your thesis right now. So I think scope of the study is just the time frame of your study, and you have to tell us why you are picking that time frame. So let me come back to you that you are using secondary data. So your time frame must be at least 30 years. At least 30 years because of your regression, like we did in your chapter 5 and so on and so forth. So you need to have, your scope needs to be broad. It might be broader than 30 years, but it should be at least 30 years for you to have a reasonable results or something that is dependable. Now, I may not remember why it is like why it is like 30 years minimum. I may not remember, but that's just how we used to do it. Maybe you go and ask some statisticians and they are going to help us out. So now I was talking about you being interested in the inflation of 2019 to 2022. Now your scope of the study cannot just be 2019 to 2022. So it has to start from years back, but it is going to incorporate. So instead of, let me say, 1970 to 2010, so mine is like 1970 to 2021. So I've incorporated 2019, 2020, 2021 into the scope, right? So that's about that. If you are using primary data, I don't think scope. I don't think your scope is going to be like that. Now, so that's that about chapter 1 briefly. Now, chapter 2 is about background to the study. So, background to the study is like what has been happening in the country or in the area of your research. So, let's say you are looking at inflation and Nigeria's economic growth. So, what has been happening in terms of inflation, the periods of inflation? What is inflation? So, you have to talk about this with reference to other studies, other authors, what they've written. So, you combine different studies from different journals, then you read, synthesize. So, you take something from here, take something from there. Not copy and paste, though. We are going to talk about plagiarism later, not in this video. So, I'm going to expound on background to the study later on. Now, chapter 3 is your literature review. When you talk about literature is just studies, okay, what people have done. Now, what I'm doing right now is kind of me contributing to literature, but not in written form. So, what people have done in written form, I'm not sure if it includes non-written form. Okay, what they've done, how they've contributed to different areas, different topics. So that those are the things you call literature. So you're talking about journals, you're talking about websites, you're talking about books, you're talking about stuff that I can get materials from, right? So those are the things that constitute a literature review. But here, when you're looking at research work, so literature review is like other studies, what have they said about your topic. So under that, you are going to do conceptual review. Conceptual review is just talking about the concept. So economic growth in Nigeria. So you kind of tell us what is growth. So I was talking about conceptual review, just talking about concepts. So you have impact of economic growth on impact of inflation on Nigeria's economic growth. So you talk about what is inflation, how has different studies define inflation. So and that's be systematic, like for it to kind of make sense. So from there, different measures of inflation, you have CPI, you have GDP deflator. I was talking about here that one of the purposes of writing research is to demonstrate students' understanding of their field. So what are the measures of inflation? You must have known that from your undergraduate studies before your final year, before you are writing your project. So there are two ways inflation can be measured, or maybe more than two, but at least now I know two. It will be through the CPI, the GDP deflator. So you talk about that to your conceptual review. Alright, then you are done with inflation. You then move to growth, like economic growth. What is economic growth? So you kind of define it, your own definition. Is it not really your own definition, right? But different definitions from different journals that you read. And it may be more than definitions, it depends on what you've read. So you are going to get your own kind of content from the different journals that you are reading. Okay, so you just look at, what did this person say about economic growth? What did this person say about economic growth? So what can you pick from here? Can you pick from here? But you must ensure that there is a flow. So you don't write in an haphazard manner. So if you are to eat your food, now first thing, have the food cooked or have the food bought, right? Then you find a place to sit, normal table manners. Find a place to sit, place the food on the table or whatever, and you start eating. Put the spoon or your hand into the food and take it to your mouth. So that's kind of the flow. So you're coming from the kitchen, you made the food, and you set the table, then started eating. So you don't start to write the project from I started eating, then I set the table, then I cooked the food. So it's not flowing, right? So you've written the same thing as someone else that wrote kitchen, setting the table to eating. So you wrote eating, setting the table to cooking. You guys are writing the same thing, but yours is not flowing. So you're kind of putting what should have come first, you are putting it last. Alright, so I remember then when I was writing my project, the one person that was helping me to proofread, what was her name? I think Victoria. She was an MSc student then. I thought I had written something nice. So she read my work and oh my God, Dwayne, your work is not flowing. I didn't understand what she was saying. Your work is not flowing. Like there's a break in the thought process. I'm kind of jumping. So after writing this, she expected it to continue. Then I've jumped something. And I go back to the first one and so I was like, no. So now I understand how the flow should be. So that's like kind of chronological in all that. Alright. After that, you move into theoretical review. You are reviewing theories. that researchers have used, other studies have used over time to check the impact of inflation on economic growth. So you don't have to be disturbing yourself. When you go through journals, like significant amount of journals, you see different theories that people have used. So what you just have to do is to pick about 4 or 5 of them, all right, and review them, like talk about them. What have people said about? So report what people have said about those theories. Now you have to be very careful because you'll be using one of those theories in your chapter 4. So for the rest of your project, you'll be using one of those theories. So don't review theories that are not important, that are unnecessary. We are going to expand on that later. An empirical review. So here you'll be talking about empirics, like what have been the findings of other people that have cross-checked the effect of inflation on economic growth. Have they said that that's a significant relationship? Have they shown that it does not even relate at all? Have they shown that the effect is positive or is small? All of those things. So having gone through different kind of journals, you'll be reporting the findings of other researchers, right? So that's empirical review. Then methodology review, or maybe methodological review. So here you are looking at the estimation techniques that different researchers, different studies have used from the journals you're reading, okay, to check the impact of inflation on economic growth. So how did they generate their data? What did they use to estimate their results? What's the method of analysis? Okay, by now you probably have gone through econometrics, except maybe you've not entered your 3rd year in school. Alright, so going through econometrics, you should have learned about maybe multiple linear regression, maybe RDL, autoregressive distributive lag, maybe Gauge modeling, maybe simultaneous equation modeling, all of those stuff. So when you go through different studies, you would see the method that people used, alright, that researchers used to check the impact of inflation and economic growth. So what you'll be doing there is to be reporting those methods, those estimation techniques. So that's what methodological review is about. Now chapter 4 is where your own work begins. So let me call this video and start again. Yeah.